The book A Quiet Belief in Angels begins in a hotel room, in a darkened hotel room, with a guy in his mid-30s facing a man who he's just shot, but you don't know who it is that he's shot. And you get his internal monologue, and you're definitely given the impression that he's now going to tell you his life story, and you're going to find out why he's in a hotel room and why he shot somebody. The book then cuts to this guy at 12 years of age in a small town called Augusta Falls in Georgia on the day of his own father's funeral. And this is his wake-up call. His mother and himself are now alone. He has no brothers and sisters. And he is essentially now the man of the house, and his mother, who seems to be very compassionate and very sympathetic, very understanding, but at the same time grief-stricken about the fact that she's lost her husband. She seems to have a very balanced philosophy on life and is very encouraging to him to do what he wants with his life. And he tells her that he wants to be a writer. Her response to this is, I think you better start carrying a pencil. A little while later, a school friend, a little girl that is in the same class as Joseph Vaughan, is found brutally murdered. And this is shocking. This is a horrific event. The community has never experienced anything like this before. And it's not the only murder that occurs. There are then a series of murders, 3 or 4 or 5 of them, that occur over the subsequent years. And the town starts to look inward. They really feel as though it's somebody that they know. And there's a sense of uncomfortable paranoia and anxiety. And the sheriff, a guy called Haynes Deering, is very involved and very active. He's very much a stalwart of the community, and he's coordinating with other sheriffs and other members of the sheriff's departments from surrounding towns and counties to try and get the community to work with him in discovering who's responsible for these killings. Joseph Vaughan, now in his early teens, 14, 15, decides he's going to do something effective too. So he corrals together a group of his friends who are of the same age, half a dozen of them, and they form this little fraternity called the Guardians. And they're going to look out for their school friends, and they're going to make sure that no other girls get murdered. They don't succeed. It's a fiasco. They get into trouble, they get put under curfew. The sheriff has to come and visit their parents, and tell the parents, look, keep these guys inside there, putting their own lives at risk, And then what happens is that a local character is found hanged, appears to have committed suicide. And there's artifacts that belong to the murder victims in his pockets and in his house under the floorboards. Everybody heaves a tremendous sigh of relief, and the nightmare's over. Life can go back to normal. And Joseph is now approaching his late teens and early 20s, and his mother got sick, and she was put in a hospital, kind of like a nervous disorder, and she's fading. And there's nothing to hold him in Georgia, and he's still got this tremendous desire to be a successful writer. He reads voraciously. So he decides that he's going to go to New York and be part of this burgeoning zeitgeist of, Beat generation and brilliant young minds who are writing the great American novel. So he comes to New York and he gets a relationship, and, life is great. And then he is quickly brought back to earth when someone very close to him dies, is murdered, in precisely the same way as the young girls were being murdered in Augusta Falls many, many years before. And he realizes that the guy that they believed responsible for perpetrating these crimes was not. And the nightmare that he thought he'd escaped from, the nightmare of his childhood, has followed him to the big bad city. He then concludes it is his job to continue to find the truth. But unfortunately what happens is that he is himself arrested for this murder. He is tried, he's convicted, and he's sentenced to life. And he goes to upstate New York, Auburn, and he is imprisoned for a very long time. And one of his New York friends, a guy called Paul Hennessy, tries to convince him to write about his own experiences. And Joseph refuses. He won't do it. And over a period of years, Paul continues to visit and continues to visit and continues to insist that he does. And finally, Joseph decides he's going to write the truth of his own life. He won't just write about his arrest and his incorrect conviction for this murder. He's going to write his life story. And he writes a book, and the book is called A Quiet Belief in Angels. And he writes it on pieces of paper which Hennessy smuggles out of the prison, and Hennessy types up for him. And the book is published to huge acclaim. And the case is brought to the attention of the United States Appeal Court, and the conviction is overturned, and Joseph is released from prison after 13 years. And he is still committed, come what may, to find out the truth. And he goes back to Georgia and speaks to the guardians, who are now the same age as him. They're in their 30s. They have wives and they have kids. And they know who he is. They know what happened. They know he ended up in prison in New York, and they don't want anything to do with it. The nightmare is over. We left it behind. It was this guy back in the 1950s who's responsible. You know, we don't want any more part of this. But Joseph knows that the truth is yet to be found. So he strenuously tracks down the sheriff of Augusta Falls to work with him on discovering the real identity of the perpetrator of these child murders from the 1930s. And he finds him, and together they discover the truth. And the book concludes with him identifying and isolating the individual responsible for these killings, and in some small way justice is therefore seen to be done.